to look at the future. These days I think we see a lot of vulnerabilities among very young people that I don't have this, I don't have this, so therefore I think my life is gone.
I was privileged that while there was a lot of physical poverty, there wasn't any aspirational poverty. I would say father and not father. Okay, I would say
Yeah.
very good. I will not say very good. Yeah, absolutely. That nervousness, that timidity, that fear. Am I any equal to all these people? And for some reason, he decided to post me in the personnel department,
Okay.
and which made me an HR manager over time.
So welcome to the HR world.
Reconcile to that word. How can he be a boss unless he's a mafia leader? He cannot be a boss.
So I know it's not a right perspective to look at that, but how did you tweak HR across various industries, sir?
I used to say I'm a business leader with HR expertise. I can tell you that it'll take about 3 to 5 years. At least maybe smarter guys today will do it earlier.
So I'm tempted to check with you. Was that one of the mantras of success in your HR career?
In ordinary life, never equate holding of a position with success. Also to understand that a CEO, like a cinema actor, or a CHRO, like a good actor, cannot produce a blockbuster movie.
Hello and welcome to this episode, a very special episode of HR Footprints podcast series. Honestly, all these episodes are so special because they're giving me wonderful, fantastic opportunity to interact directly with some of the most inspiring leaders, HR professionals, educators, and entrepreneurs. So, in this process, in this series, today I have a very, very special, a multifaceted personality, the way I actually look at him. You can look at him as a global strategic HR leader turned into educator, a mentor, a coach. But above all of this, I look at him as a wonderful human being who sees life in its totality. That is the one thing that I picked up from him. I'm speaking about Dr. Chandrasekhar Sripada. So let's welcome him onto the show.
Thank you, Raj.
So, very, very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you so much for sparing your very, very important time. And it really matters to us so much. It is so valuable to us. Thank you so much.
Appreciate. No, it's my opportunity.
Wonderful.
Too.
So, I will keep this discussion more at a very personal level, sir, because anyone who sees your digital presence, these days, I think all the profiles are easily available. I think anyone who sees it, they understand that you are a very highly educated person, very interestingly, with a master's in English literature and an MBA in business management, and of course, a PhD in HR and so many certifications. All of that is one side. But all those HR professionals, including me, who have seen you across various conferences, various forums, we would actually look at you as a most eloquent speaker, very articulate. But here is my first question, sir. I know that all of this did not come to you on a platter. It didn't come. You really worked your way through it. And you are what you are to us today in this avatar because of a lot of things that you did about yourself. So we would like to really get that inspiration. How did it all start? What were the origins? What were those humble beginnings, sir?
No, you're right. You're right. Which is why I always say that a person is not his or her biodata. We all make the mistake of kind of equating a kind of a biodata or a CV or where did he study, what did he do, and make a kind of extrapolations and predictions about a person based on what we have stereotypical associations in our mind that if somebody talks good things about management. He should have gone to Harvard. If somebody has been knowing business, then he should have been a great entrepreneur. These are all automatic associations. If somebody has spoken English well, then he should have gone to an English medium school. It is life teaches me that it's not like that. Actually, you can shape life the way you want, depending on irrespective of your background. Of course, if you didn't have the right background, struggle is that much harder. So now that's the context. And let me say what's the background. The background is that I was born in a small town, and then I grew up in rural Odisha. Okay, so my
Okay.
first 20 years of my life was actually fleeting from small village town to small village town across 11 districts of the state of Odisha, which at that time had only 13 districts. And I'm speaking of 1960s and 70s. In 1960s and 70s, Odisha was one of the most underdeveloped and
Yeah.
poorer states. I'm very happy that today it has transformed. It's much better. It's got lots of things going well, roads, airports, etc. But I grew up at a time. If we missed a bus to go from a town to another town, then we had to wait 24 hours to get the next bus. And many parts of the
Okay.
state, yeah, 24 hours you had to wait. And that waiting was not like waiting in a luxury hotel or a waiting lounge. It's waiting on a platform or a urine stinking bus stand or mosquito ridden some culvert or something like that. So I have had what in retrospect looks like the privilege of living amidst poverty. And I didn't, well, I was not poor. Let's be honest. I was not personally poor. It doesn't mean that I had to struggle for my food or anything. But to live within an environment which is poor and where resources are scarce actually circumscribes your life. And you just do. For example, I had lived in formative years of my life when I was doing class 10, which is supposed to be a very formative year, in a small village town. I call it village town because it was a village, now it has become a town, and which was surrounded by a river from all sides, and there was no bridge on the river. And so the only way you had to go into that town was to go in a boat. And often there were only one or two people who took that boat. So if you went, you had to go out, then you had to wait for a boat guy to come in and allow, take you. And often it was risky because if there are floods and rains, etc., then nobody would come. So for days together, you wouldn't get milk, you wouldn't get, because they had to come from outside. You wouldn't get newspapers, you wouldn't get many things that are normal. So suppose you ran out of rice and the store shop could not have rice, so he may tell you that it will come after 1 week. So then you had, even if you had the money to buy rice, there would be no way to buy the rice because it was not available. And so you have to make do to live with something else. So was I poor directly? No. But was I rich? No. I certainly belong to what is called a low middle class family. And my descriptions of a low middle class family was like what my mother would do for me. For example, if I used to wear what today is called the bathroom slippers, that was the maximum luxury footwear I could afford. And I had only one bathroom slipper for a year, literally, to go to the school, to go everywhere. And assume middle of the year, the slipper tore, or the plastic, thing that hangs your foot in the tore. My mother would take a safety pin and fix it and say, now it'll run for another 2 months. Let's buy the slipper only after that. So did I lack a slipper? No. But was I rich enough to buy 15 shoes, which I do today? Was not. So to give you a flavor of what was my life, I went to rural schools that were thatched roofs, mud walls, where barely teachers came. many places there were no easy toilets to go to any formal way, and electricity was rare and infrequent. In heats that were 44 degrees, 46 degrees. I lived in the most, what at that time was called the Ethiopia of India, which is the Kalahandi district, which really saw starvation death. I have personally seen starvation death in my presence. So from whether all the normal trappings, all this normal things that define a good life, which is go to a good public school, go be brought up in a big city, see various things which people today take for granted. I did not have, and that's the environment in a vernacular medium I studied for first 20 years. So that was my background, and that has been a very tough struggle. It shaped my personality. I learned to live with less. I learned to, understand the challenge of having a circumscribed life, as you call it.
No, you beautifully painted a verbal picture. So I could actually visualize all that was happening, the boat and the river and the chapels. I mean, it's. I think what you described is the most challenging kind of a person for a child to grow up. I mean,
Yeah.
forget
No,
about all the kind of comfort that we seem to be having today. All right. Just
I
one thought
actually,
is,
all this proverbial studying under the lantern, I actually
yeah,
studied under the lantern because the
okay.
teacher won't come during the day because he was busy with agriculture. There was
Hmm.
nobody to oversee, and he would come and call us in the evening to his home.
Okay.
And his home in some parts sometimes won't have electricity. Most of the evenings were load shedding and electricity. So he would say, bring your lantern with you. So I even today would know how to clean a lantern, how to cut a wick,
Right.
how to fill it with kerosene, how to clean it with ash, and how to carry a lantern and a small chapai, whatever it's called, a little bit of an
Right.
asan, and books, and would go in the evening to the teacher's house to learn. So these are the kind of things that have kind of shaped my life.
Amazing, amazing, sir. One thought crossing, I mean, one question crossing my mind as I was listening to you is more for the child in you during those days. What was the hope, or what was that mental makeup of that child to look at the future? I mean, these days I think we see a lot of vulnerabilities among very young people that I don't have this, I don't have this, so therefore I think my life is gone. This is the dead end. But looks like I think you went through tougher times, but the child in you always nurtured a hope about the future. So, what was the mental makeup, sir?
So it was not mine. I mean, I was certainly, I was privileged that while there was a lot of physical poverty, there wasn't any aspirational poverty. It is something which is, let's sort of, for lack of anything, we don't know, but it's probably most appropriate to say it's God's grace, and it's sort of circumstantial. And I owe it to my parents. I owe it to the
Yeah,
people I lived with. I
yeah,
owe it to the lot of very ordinary people. Somebody, a clerk in a forest department of the government, somebody who's a school teacher, somebody who's a vice principal, somebody who's a drama actor. I remember many such people who today would pass off as extremely marginal and ordinary people. In those little village towns in which I lived, what had very big ideas about the world. They kept themselves informed, they read extensively. My father himself, for example, would not sleep till he listens to BBC in the night on
okay,
a transistor radio and the All
right,
India radio. So I was exposed to the world through that transistor radio. We had both a desktop radio and a transistor radio, and it would keep fleeting, going. The sound would go here and there, but
yeah,
within that, I was extremely fascinated to listen about the world as the radio presented it to us. This happened in this country, that happened, that leader was assassinated, that wars broke out, these elections happened, all those things. And back in the school, in spite of that kind of a very, as I keep saying, circumscribed, narrow world, some of the teachers were extraordinary. They would encourage
Okay.
you. They would encourage you to think beyond the school and actually the ideals of the world. That was the Nehruvian era. And I imbibed right in the childhood what did democracy mean, what did secularism mean, why India should be a united country, what's the value of celebrating our diversity, what is patriotism, how should we grow, what should happen, what is innovation, how should the country compete with other countries. All these topics were not today's topics. They were
Yeah.
all topics that were very much a discussion, except that they were discussed in a very simple, ordinary way. Somebody will just mention. So let me give you an episode of a classroom thing which would expand your mind. So I was barely in class 7, and there was a geography lesson going on in a small school which had really a thatched roof. And my geography teacher would come. He was very passionate about that subject. And that lesson was about countries. So he spoke for some time about Japan. And I'm talking of late 60s. And he spoke of Japan, and he told us that Japan is one of the most developed countries, and it has recovered from a big war where it was destroyed and all that. And but guys, why they are so developed? Because mm, they are very innovative. They are scientifically minded. They are discovering new things, and lots of inventions and lot of technology is what is making them so great. And we are far behind that. So I was very part excited, part anxious. So I raised my hand and I told him, "Sir, there is nothing to discover anymore. I have been thinking about it, that we should also discover. But whatever I think is already there. What is there to discover? Give me one thing we should discover, and I will find it." So the teacher gave me, he said that, "Look, I live about 14 kilometers away from this school, in a much smaller town than this town. And there is a bus which I take to come here. The bus I get 3 kilometers away from my home. And the school is about 4 kilometers away from the bus stop here. So I have no choice but to walk to the bus stop and then take the bus, come here, walk back to the school, because the cycle rickshaw which is available can be expensive and I can't afford it. So what I would like to do is to come in a bicycle to the bus stop. And then problem I have is that I can't have two bicycles, one in my town and one in this town. So I would love to have a bicycle that is foldable, that is
Okay.
light, that can be carried in my hand. So I open it, I sit on it, and come to the school, bus stop, fold it, take it with me, and come back and ride back to the school. I realized that there is a lot to discover, a lot to invent. So look how he expanded our mind. So I kept thinking about it. Then next year we were promoted in a subject what today is called SUPW, socially useful productive work, or whatever it is called, extracurricular studies. They offered a bouquet of offerings, and one of them was cycle repair.
Okay.
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 I chose that. There were other things. There was music. There was this, but inspired this man that someday I would discover a foldable cycle. I went and joined the cycle repair school. So even today, I can, for example, change a punctured tire tube. I know what to do if a tube goes punctured because I was taught all those things. But that's all. That it ended there. I couldn't pursue anything. I didn't know how to actually make a cycle lighter enough and
Right.
foldable enough. I didn't put my mind to it after that. But I'm giving you this example just to tell you that in the most impoverished conditions, people can think big. And therefore, poverty is not about physical resources, it is about mental resources. The richest of people can behave very poor, as it is often reported that some of the rich people, including in this city, were living a very miserly and poor life. And very poor people who may be struggling for a half a meal could be thinking pretty globally and pretty big. So that's thing that we all should know and not again confuse that
No,
rich is
amazing.
good.
That
Yeah?
that was an amazing, a very very deep insights. In fact, I was just taking notes as you were speaking, summarizing some of my key points. I think the beautiful thing that you mentioned is there was no aspirational poverty. I think the moment we get into that, I think we get stuck. So I think that's the end of growth. I think that's the first thing that I learned from your episode. The second one, I think, how your dad and the people around you allowed you to have that wider exposure, and you were receiving it. Let it be a transistor, BBC radio, or your teacher who's provoking you to think about Japanese growth system. I think those were. It looks like small things, but I think you kept that exposure going on,
That kept goes
and
cascading.
then that
Absolutely.
really allowed you to think big.
Yeah, absolutely. So
No,
that's what
great
I think.
lessons, sir. Great lessons. In fact, the very purpose of doing these chat sessions, I'm already deriving it. I'm already deriving. Thank you very much for that lovely, very powerful story. So once it all started, I mean, it's very, very inspiring childhood that you went through. Now, if you were to just move a little forward, were there any jobs that you joined and then got into HR, or HR happened?
HR happened not because of me. Um, so the story there is that the only aspiration I had at that time, because of my relatively circumscribed and poorer life, was two things. One is I must be what can be called now urbane, which is
Yeah.
city-like. I must have the smartness of a city person. Once in a while, maybe once in a year, we had enough money to travel in a train into a bigger city. So, for example, in those days, the nearest bigger city we could travel to was Vizag or Visakhapatnam. Okay,
Yeah.
that itself was a big thing for us, you know. And through my those 20 21 years, the biggest city I traveled was to Madras and Hyderabad. I had not even
Okay.
seen till 21, I had not even seen Mumbai or Delhi or any of those cities. So my aspiration were twofold. One, I must be that a smart guy of the city who knows how to tuck in a shirt. And I never tucked in a shirt for all those years, you know, and wear a shoe and all that. So that itself was one of the lifestyle aspirations I had. The second aspiration I had is that I must speak English like the English. Because in those days, I used to speak English with a thick Odia accent. So I would say father and not father. Okay. I would
Yeah.
say very good. I will not say very good. Okay. So whatever it took, you know, the Odia, obviously, I mean, studied in Odia, therefore, like you've studied in Telugu, you would have a Telugu influence on your pronunciation. So these were my two goals. That's why I pursued English literature in a big city. So there's a lot of story there in terms of how my lack of English education, in spite of my getting all the adequate marks, didn't get me a seat in St. Stephen's College in Delhi, to which I actually went to study. That was my big aspiration, to go to that big college and study. But they refused me an admission because I didn't have an English medium education, though I had topped the exam, or I was in the
Okay.
first three, four people, not exactly top. Then I came to Hyderabad, and in those days, in this beautiful place called Golden Threshold, which was on the Nampally Station Road, was situated the early stages of the what is now called the Central University, the
Yeah.
University of Hyderabad. It had the best English department of the country at that time. It had the best of poets, best of writers, best of people from different parts of the world to teach some of the outstanding global level English literature. And I got a seat there. They didn't stop me for reasons of, that I was rural, I was not English educated. And I just used those 2 years, 18 hours a day, 6.5 days or 7 days of work. And I would have voraciously read through the libraries of my university and Osmania University and perhaps all the universities of all the libraries of the city. I would probably know a lot of libraries, small, big, in various parts of the city. Traveling public buses, going there early in the morning before the librarian came and opened, and sat down. In those days, I went to CIEFL. Now I think it's
Yeah.
called the University for Foreign Languages or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And they had a lab for pronunciation. And I learned phonetics, and I repaired and changed my speaking style and my pronunciation. So in 3, 4 semesters, I started learning that I should say not very, but very. And that gradually brought in a lot of confidence. So I achieved my goal. I learned how to tuck in my shirt. I somehow bought a pair of shoe, and led a slightly. My money didn't allow me to still lead all my classmates usually were girls from rich families who were all brought up in Hyderabad and other cities, and I was the only couple of few boys in a class of 30. We were 5 boys, 25 girls. So to hold yourself up in those days was a challenge. But within my means, I learned the habits of a city-bred person. What that meant to me is confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing. The ability to speak English well and the ability to be able to smartly encounter urban city-bred people re- filled in me the confidence to say, I can compete in this world, that I can actually survive and compete and do whatever it takes. And
Amazing.
that's one transformation which defines my life. The fact
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
could transform myself from a very impoverished, resource crunched, uh, circumscribed, not well exposed rural boy to a fairly smart city kid in just about 2 years, speaking English like the English, or speaking English like the convent educated
Yeah.
people, was a big, big, big personal transformation. And that story or that achievement continues to inspire me even till today, saying that if this can happen to you, then anything can happen to you. You can actually do many things that you
Yeah.
set your mind to do.
No,
Now,
these were the life changing kind of
yeah,
experiences. I'm sure
yeah,
I think they continue to inspire us from within, because I
yeah,
think what you're saying is yeah, when you learned language, that's one part, but the intangible that you learned is about the confidence,
right.
standing on your feet with all your heads up, and speaking with anyone with confidence. I think that's amazing. I can visualize how the
Yeah,
boy
yeah.
before that and the boy after that would have really felt. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. That nervousness, that timidity, that fear. Am I any equal to all these people? That
Yeah.
continued the first half of the 2 years. 1 year I was like that because I remember how painful it was for me when I would speak in the class. I would make a very important point, but the whole class will burst laughing
Yeah.
because they would find my pronunciation completely, for them it was atrocious. It was
Yeah.
very dehati,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they wouldn't like that, so they would tease me and I'll feel very humiliated. But the teachers were good. They saw that this guy knows what he's saying. He has read the text, he understands the issue, he's just speaking differently.
Yeah.
And so they said, why don't you do this, why don't you? So I kind of used every opportunity to learn better, and all that. So now you asked me about the job. Let me quickly go there. Otherwise, every event of life we can go on talking, because you know, I somehow feel, the most ego boosting thing for a person is to talk about his life. And so it sort of fills you with some pride and joy. But you must be conscious that why should anybody be interested in your life? These are, everyone has their own experience. So I want to moderate this. So let me quickly take you to the job. So job just happened. Job happened because my father was retiring, and he wrote me what I always hated, a postcard, because a
Okay.
postcard will be read by everybody else.
Yeah.
And in a postcard, he wrote a three-line postcard saying, "My dear son, you must know that I'm retiring in 3 months. About the time you would be finishing your education, you must urgently find a job because I cannot afford anything else."
Okay.
Okay, so I spoke to someone, and that person said, "Well, I am writing an exam which might lead to a job." And the exam was Management Trainee for Steel Authority of India.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And
Sale.
sale. And I had no idea. I was in the world of Keats, Shelley, and Shakespeare. And my teachers told me that I should actually get a Rhodes Scholarship and go to Cambridge and study advanced English literature
Yeah.
as a PhD student. And I couldn't afford that. So, following my father's request, diktat, whatever the circumstances of life, I wrote along with that girl this test, and it so turned out that I got through, and I was called for a interview. For the first time, somebody paid my second class ticket from Hyderabad to Madras, and I attended the interview, and lo and behold, I got the job. And I walked into my job in 10 days from when I finished my education. My
Okay.
last exam finished in the middle of June, and 1st of July, I was in my job in a place that I had not even heard that a place like that existed, called Bhilai Steel Plant.
Yeah.
Okay, and I went there, and that changed my life. We were put in a training program which IIM Calcutta used to run, and at the end of the training program, there was an assessment done, and there was a manager of management development, what today is called talent development. That manager's job was to find out which person should be posted in what department.
Okay.
And for some reason, he decided to post me in the personnel department,
Okay.
and which made me an HR manager over time.
So, welcome to the HR world. So, that was how it happened. Oh, lovely. So, that is how a literature student entered HR, thanks
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Steel Authority of India.
Yeah, and it's a very huge transition. I can tell you something interesting. So, first time in my life, I took some months to reconcile with an interesting fact that in literature and in English, in the fiction I read, the word boss often only referred to a mafia gang leader. Okay, it didn't refer to another human being who would be an ordinary person and who would lord over you, because he's now a manager. So when I went to Bhilai and some people, my colleague would call X as boss, I can't easily reconcile to that word. How can he be a boss unless he's a mafia leader? He cannot be a boss. But then I kind of found that boss means something else in the corporate world.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, I mean, now I think these days we casually call any of the reporting managers as the boss. Yeah.
So can you see the association where it came from? That these bosses are all mafia guys. They're all they are like mafia leaders. So they behave like that. That's why they are called bosses.
Right.
So
So
yeah.
yeah. So from that entry, I'm sure I think you traveled across various industries. I mean, to the extent I remember, I think you worked with manufacturing industries and you worked with IT, some of the very global names that you worked with. And then, lastly, you sort of corporate career-wise, I think you concluded with the pharmaceutical as well. So when you see this whole journey, I keep hearing this from some of the business managers and business owners that You guys can keep on saying that I got exposure to that industry, this industry. Actually, it doesn't really matter because you're a HR guys. It is all about entry to exit of an employee, right? What's a big deal, whether it's IT industry or it's a pharmaceutical industry? So I know it's not a right perspective to look at that, but how did you tweak HR across various industries, sir?
Well, to be honest, for quite a while, I was also caught in the same dilemma whether HR exists outside of business and industry, or is it actually integral to business and industry? It took some time for me to sort of understand that. It took some 5, 7 years of my early career to kind of figure out that HR doesn't exist in a vacuum, that there is nothing about HR you can do if you didn't understand the industry or understand the business. So, in just about the early part of my career itself, I actually spent a lot of time trying to understand that the technology, the product, the market, the competition, and the imperatives and the levers of the business, what makes. So, in the early steel industry, for example, we were very soon exposed to the idea that look, labor productivity matters. Labor productivity matters because the number of people to produce a million of steel in India used to be about 10 times more than in competitive countries like Korea or Japan and other places.
Okay.
So then we realize what is the value of benchmarking. What happens if you have an optimized workforce? What does it do to business? And then the initiatives of multi-skilling, training, and all those HR initiatives were a derivative of handling an organizational issue or a challenge. And then, therefore, I realized very soon in my career that you must first spend time in business and industry, and then understand what HR initiatives or programs or work of HR will address that and help that issue. And only then you will be relevant.
Okay.
So, over time,
Right.
I tell everyone that almost I used to say about middle of my career onwards that if somebody asks me, what do you do and how do you see yourself? I used to say, I'm a business leader with HR expertise.
Oh, okay. That's a great way to introduce yourself. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm a business leader with expertise in HR. Okay.
yeah.
Mm.
I think that's how we should see the HR profession should see itself like that. It should not see itself as something very special outside business. If there is no business, there will be no HR. So it's as that simple
Just
as
a
that.
just a quick clarification there, sir. Is this perspective relevant only for the senior folks in HR, the HR leaders and all, or it is even applicable at the operational level
No,
of HR?
absolutely. It's applicable at all levels. I can tell you that it'll take about 3 to 5 years, at least two, maybe smarter guys today will do it earlier. But it took me about 5 years in my career to
Okay.
get this fully understood and absorbed and
Right.
integrated in my thinking and work.
Right.
But if you, as a guidance, if you were to say, what would I tell a youngster, is
Yeah.
that please enter the profession knowing well that the more you know business, the better you will do in HR.
Wonderful.
and
Wonderful.
and you
Yeah.
and it is nothing to do with the stage and age or level or anything. At every job, a simple guy whose job is to do small coordination of recruitment, which
Yeah.
is get some CVs short, arrange to shortlist them, and then see that how they get interviewed, candidates get interviewed. It may look like a very ordinary task, but if it is not situated in the business, you will not know what CVs to get. You will
Yeah.
not know
Very true.
how to shortlist
Yeah.
them. You will
Yeah.
not know
Yeah.
what to ask in the interview.
Yeah.
If you don't know your organization, you will be all lost. So clearly, at any stage, literally
Very true.
within 3 to 5 years of your career, you
Hmm.
should start focusing on
Okay.
on
Okay.
business.
So I'm tempted to check with you. Was that one of the mantras of success in your HR career? Understanding business.
Well, let me give you a little bit of my perspective. So first thing we should pause and ask, was I successful? Okay.
I expected this from a person like you.
So I was not, life looks beautiful in retrospect. It's like now it is reeling out like a 3-hour movie. So everything looks great, great. But when I was going through my journey, there were many moments when I was not successful.
Okay.
Okay, when I didn't meet the expectations of my stakeholders, sometimes I didn't meet my own expectation. Sometimes I couldn't come up with the smartest of solution to the challenges I faced. So to say that, there was all some mantras that can be derived out of an ordinary life, never equate
Mm.
holding of a position with success. So it's very
Okay.
important to understand. Just
Excellent. Yeah.
because you are a CEO, it doesn't mean you are successful.
Yeah.
Being successful CEO is different from being CEO.
Mm.
And also to understand that a CEO, like a cinema actor, or a CHRO, like a good actor, cannot produce a blockbuster movie every day.
Yeah.
In the whole life, there will be only
Yeah.
moments of success,
Okay.
episodes of success,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not a continuous success. So we should not apportion too much of credit to ordinary careers, but within that, if you were to say, is there a correlation between those episodes and moments of success and your ability to understand business? Then the answer is yes. In all
Right.
those times in my
Right.
career where I demonstrated deeper understanding of business and deeper alignment with the expectations of my stakeholders, I
Right.
certainly performed my job better and was considered successful.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, though you don't really prescribe mantras of success, but I think listening to your perspectives, I think a person like me, we can all learn. Saying, I think one is of course business understanding. I think that will really help you. But the other insight that I gained just listening to you a while ago was I think you should never inflate yourself with the labels that you carry because you need to constantly define your own yardstick of success because that keeps changing from time to time. And the measure of success is not only mine, but it's also defined by my stakeholders. So we need to constantly be sensitive towards that and keep aligning. I think that journey is more important than just saying one absolute success or failure. I
Exactly.
think that's the kind of insight that I take from your description, sir. Wonderful.
Sure.
Now, it takes me back to a few years ago. I do remember that I think you wrote a piece, a very important piece, on LinkedIn, if I remember correctly, differentiating. It's a short article that differentiating between HR and human capital. Now, these days, I think we have been talking about human capital, whether we understand that word or not, but I think we've been using it. But just wanted to hear it from you. What is that one or two subtle differences in terms of perspective, HR versus HCM?
So both of them are um, gifts from capitalism. So both of them treat people like resources, which sometimes is a bit of a insult to the huge potential of human beings. But having said that, we live in a capitalist world. Our models are mentally thought through by the capitalist thinking. So within that framework, resource is an expendable view, which is like a cost view. So it's cost me to have resources and I can spend it them away and I have to kind of um, so whereas capital is an investment view. I will have to invest. Capital is usually put to investment, and of course you still get a return on that investment,
Yeah.
but it is not like money you are spending away. So if you take an HR view, you will treat people as expendable, as
Okay.
interchangeable, as ordinarily kind of just manage, use and throw types of thought process. Whereas if you treat them as capital, then you will say, well, I am investing in this, so I better get a return on it. And then, therefore, I will treat the capital very carefully,
Yeah.
attend to it. And so suddenly the paradigm changes. The centrality of the human resource to the main context of business or organization suddenly enhances and improves if you don't see it merely as resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the kind of a simple
Right.
division. I'm sure economists will have many more sophisticated ways of explaining this, but I thought I'll just explain the
No, but
ordinary way.
understanding this paradigm itself, I think, is deep enough that if someone were to truly understand HRM and HCM, subtle difference that you explained, I think that entire approach towards managing people will be redefined. I mean, as I'm seeing this is expendable. This is more as an investment and making them more productive so that they will deliver greater returns to the organization, to the business, or whatever it is. I think this outlook itself is very different. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
So we
that is
should
the
not
way I
treat
think
them
it's.
as just interchangeable words or sophisticated words replacing one another. There is a
Exactly.
reason why the word of human capital is seeking to replace HR. With the vocabulary comes a shift of attention.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. So now comes, I mean, we talked about a lot of transitions from the kind of very challenging childhood to the English literature to HR, and HR to global HR leader. Now comes the next stage of your life where you made a big switch from a corporate leadership to an educator. Now you are a professor. So how did this happen, and how much of transformation did it call for in within you personally?
Now, two parts to what you asked. So how did this happen and what transformation? So let me answer both. So this didn't just accidentally happen. This happened because years of intent and intentionality that I had nurtured a hope and a plan carefully in my mind that when I retire, I will teach.
Okay.
And that was not just in the last 6 months of retirement, it was 20 years before retirement. I knew that
Okay.
someday I would retire and someday I would have to have a second career, and that career would be in teaching because that's my passion. And I did a lot of preparation for that. I
Sure.
taught as a visiting professor. I got collaterals. I got student ratings. I understood the various requirements of being a formal teacher in a formal college. So it's not giving guest lecture, it is about,
Yeah.
and each profession comes with its own requirements. So I had already prepared myself for all that. And again, as God's grace, I approached the ISB leaders, authorities. They found at that point of time, they found my career and learning and preparation good enough to give me a job, and I'm thankful to them. So they gave me a job. So I really walked in. Always, all my jobs had only a 7 days gap between when
Okay.
I finished one job and I go to the next job. I never took what's called big breaks. I
Mhm.
just took very small break, usually within a week, within 5 working days, and then I'll move on to the next job. So I walked away from
Okay.
I was on 30th or 31st of July, I retired, and 7th of August, I was in my next job as a teacher. So then I gradually soaked into me that this is in the real world, it's a very different profession. So what are
Okay.
the transformations that were required? Again, I can easily articulate them now that 7 years have passed. I can look at it in retrospect. I can sort of derive formulae out of what it requires. But at the time when I was going through this, it was not this clear to me, I must tell you. But now in retrospect, I know what changes were required. Number
Okay.
one is that management jobs are very generalist jobs, and professors' jobs are highly specialized jobs. So your attitude has to quickly change from having a view on everything in the world to having a far deeper view on one part of a thing in the world, because
Okay.
teaching is largely based on good research, and academic world prioritizes research over everything else, and that is for good reason. And research is not writing an essay about what will happen to the world in 2040. It's about very small thing like you know why city A is able to, do this versus city B, or why person A is able to do versus B. Why is a person more active in morning hours or evening hours? As narrow as you can go,
Sure.
as more defined as you can go, is what would gradually bring you depth and rigor. So first transition is, how do you not just generally keep giving opinions on everything, but learn to focus in an area and learn to teach specific topics with depth, rigor, and research and evidence. That's the first transition. Second is just generally this hustling life, life where you are all the time sort of jugadu things, setting things
Yeah.
together, making things happen, coordination, firefighting, assembling things, making things happen is what most executive and managerial life is. And however, here, there is no such urgency for action. This is a life which is reflection. Here in this life, reflection, thoughtfulness, meditation, literally, ability to stay focused on one thing for a long period of time and pay attention to things in great detail and learn things in depth and take your own time to kind of refine your thoughts and all that, which is very different from multitasking and running around and doing.
Yeah.
I used to do some 50 meetings in a day, and I would do various things. I mean, I would pride myself that from morning 8 till 9 in the night, I would work and meet hundreds of people, go to parties, do that, this, and all that, walk from one meeting to the other, and all that. Those are not the life. The life is pretty much more calmer and more relaxed in one way, but for a good reason, not to lounge around, but to find that peace so that you can you can go deep into a topic. Okay, so one transition is from general breadth to depth. Another transition is from activity orientation to reflection
Reflection.
and thoughtfulness.
Right.
There are other transitions. The other transitions are, the stakeholders change. Suddenly, the student community,
Yeah.
which you always felt was, oh, they know they're youngsters, they're half one third of my age. I can always give them a lecture, and my experience is good enough to tell them what they need to know. You will be humbled soon to realize that that's not what it works like, that you got to prepare a lot to address the issues of a youngster, and they are far smarter than you in many, many ways. They can hold you accountable. So the stakeholder centricity, even in corporate world, there were stakeholders who are very demanding. Board
Yeah.
members can be very demanding. Union leaders can be very demanding. Here, the stakeholders change, and you must know, you must not mistake a simple 21-year-old student as not enough of a stakeholder. That's the mistake you might
Yeah.
do. So that is the third change. So you must recognize the new stakeholder, the last change, and the four changes that I wanted to talk. And this one is an extremely enabling one. Again, very difficult. That is, however big a corporate job is, to some extent, someone will tell you what to do.
Okay.
Even if you are a big man, someone will tell you what to do. CEO may call you, board members may call you, why don't you do this, Chandra, etc. Interestingly, in good academics, no one tells you what to do. Okay,
Right.
there is no, you can't wait for instruction, direction, and all that. It is an autonomous job. It's a job where you're self-directed. And to transition yourself from that, always waiting for directions, or at least figuring out what the direction is by talking to stakeholders, etc. Even if they're polite and not giving you a direction, figuring out what they want. Here, you can't go to a dean and say, "Tell me what should I teach."
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. Nobody oversees your work. Nobody. It's so. But the consequent autonomy and freedom, if you are not used to it, could be as challenging as a guy in a prison for 15 years coming out into the open would struggle how to cope with the freedom of the open world.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I would therefore think, these four big transitions that I talked about.
So the last
Generally,
point that you mentioned, I think there's so much of self leadership, right? So you
yes,
need to lead yourself.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. You need to define your own standards. You need to have your own discipline of even time management and
Barring
where
just
to
a few
focus, what to do.
guardrails, there is
Yeah,
hardly anything you are told. You
yeah,
have to find yourself,
yeah,
and that's a
yeah.
big transition.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I hope you are. This is this conscious decision that you worked so hard for almost, you said, 2 decades. It didn't happen. Actually, you worked towards that as always you did all through your life. Hope it is giving you enough stimulation.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh
Yeah.
yes. There is no doubt. This is perhaps one of the best periods of my life where
Wow.
I almost feel that I have found my ikigai, as they
Wow.
call it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Wonderful.
It's
Right.
kind of a place where I'm doing what I like. I'm doing what the world needs from me. I probably am good at it, and interestingly, I'm paid for it. So
One.
all the
Yeah.
four things are coming together in a very free and autonomous world. So I do feel I go far more motivated into my work every day.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I guess with that zeal and interaction with the younger stakeholders and your own depth, your own research, and I think one more thing that I've noticed in all our discussions so far has been that you've been always looking ahead. You've been always looking, to update yourself, to look into the future. You were never stuck into the past. I think you always kept moving yourself. Possibly by updating yourself.
So
if I if,
don't
if I listen to the first part of our discussion today and then I read the book, I think I can understand the author's mind and the heart much better.
yeah. A
Yeah.
lot of talent. They say many a flower is brushed unseen. That unless you bring a flower from the wild forest to a manicured garden, nobody notices it. I think that lack of level playing field is not only an insult but a huge wastage of human talent. We must find talent where it is and not put artificial definitions around it. Find it in pedigree, find it in big cities, find it in big schools, find it only in more sophisticated people. A lot of raw talent waiting to be tapped in the smaller towns and villages of India. And that's India's human capital, which is waiting to be unleashed. And that unleashing will happen if you use the power of technology and change our work models.
Brilliant, sir. Thank you so much for giving us that gist of your very exciting book. I'm sure you must have been working on this for last couple of
Yeah,
years at least,
about a
because
year and
that's
a
such a
half.
vast.
Pandemic seeded it in me,
Okay,
and then
okay,
since then I worked on it. Yeah,
okay. Wonderful, sir. I think we have taken your time, but it's been worth more of those insights that we gained, starting from such a humble beginning to being an author, defining the future of work. It's amazing transitions. You might be very humble in saying everyone will have their own story, what is their kind of thing, but every story is definitely not ordinary because it all depends on how we look at the story and with what interest we want to gain insights. To my mind, I think you filled my heart, sir. Thank you so much for
so
sparing your time and sharing all your experiences with us. Hope you too enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so
indeed,
much.
indeed.
Thank you so much.
I want you and anyone else who cares to listen to this to know that picture abhi baki hai. That
Wow.
life is not done. Till it is
Ah,
done,
absolutely.
it is not done. There's a lot that we can do. So every day, the aspirational thing that I talked about, you must know the difference between ambition and aspiration. Ambition is a definite thing. You define it, you get it. Aspiration is an ever evolving ambition.
Sure.
So you reach X, then you think of the next summit. You
Yeah,
reach Y, that summit, then you think of the next summit. That's what is an
absolutely.
aspirational life.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I think
Right.
those who are blessed in some sense to recognize that eternal spring of aspiration will always be on escalator of life, literally going from orbit to orbit to orbit to orbit. That's the human potential, and I'm very kind of blessed that we have that opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. And it's been a pleasure. Once again, as I mentioned during our initial introduction, it's been my privilege to once again listen to an eloquent and most articulate leader that I am so proud of. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you very much.
Thank you.